Hello and welcome. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Ishan Russell. Tonight, we talk about foreign direct investment. India today issued a press note to activate the recent changes in the FDI policy that liberalized the rules for foreign investment considerably. Prime Minister Modi has also been highlighting increased FDI inflows to attract more investment into the country. But the question, though, is in absolute terms, how much are the FDI inflows and are the trends in those inflows indicative of FDI being viewed as the defining route towards better growth? Now, there are also political and ideological questions that the country has been facing over FDI, and tonight we'll be putting these questions to Himanshu Vats, a senior assistant editor of the Economic Times, Tapan Kumar Sen, a Rajya Sabha member of parliament from the CPIM, Gopal Krishna Agarwal, national spokesperson of the BJP, and Professor Santosh Kumar Mehrotra from JNU. Thank you all of you for coming in. Himanshu Vats, I'll start with you in terms of just the FDI experience, because in terms of just figures can be read in many ways, whether the inflows have increased or not, and how significantly have they increased. But in real terms, in absolute terms, how has India handled FDI? How much FDI has come in? And is it really the route for India?
See, FDI is doing reasonably well this year. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I will not be able to recall the precise numbers, but I mean, the numbers which have been coming out, there's been a good amount of FDI coming in.
Right.
The second part to your question is this the only route? You know, there are two things to it. If at any stage government says that we want to depend on FDI only, that is wrong. I think India is severely starved of investment just now, of all kinds, public, private, domestic, foreign. So, you know, if FDI is coming, it's very good. One of the concerns of the economy, which everybody acknowledges, is that there's not enough private investment happening from Indian companies. You know, many of them have got spare capacity. Many of them don't know what to do with their loans. There are all kinds of problems. So in this environment, any kind of investment is welcome. You know, when you are starved of investment and you need foreign exchange, this debate of whether domestic is good or foreign is good does not come.
Right.
It is only if there's all-round investment happening, and if somebody tries to say, let's have one and not the other, that is when this question will come.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of the message that is being sent across, Professor Mehrotra, I'll come across to you, because as far as the larger question of FDI is concerned, right now it really dominates media headlines everywhere. Now, do you think enough is being done to boost even public investment or even domestic private investment, or the focus is too much on FDI and FDI is not that big a savior?
Okay, you've asked many questions, so give me a little bit of time.
Sure.
First, let me add some numbers to what Himanshu was saying. In the last financial year, meaning 14-15, we've had $44 billion worth of FDI. And in the preceding financial year, 13-14, it was $36 billion. So there has been a slight increase.
Right.
But the point is that in the last 6 to 7 years, on average, the inflow has been of the order of about $35 to $45 billion. So what the increase that we have seen in this past financial year is not any significantly higher than the trend rate. I mean, that's point one. Point two, Himanshu is absolutely right. First, domestic national private investment must grow. That's when it's likely that foreign direct investment will grow. But you see, private foreign investment is not picking up, partly because it has taken some time for the government to get its public investment growing.
Right.
Now, public investment has begun to grow, and that's good news. I mean, many road projects have been awarded and several others. But you know, it will be some time before the money begins to actually flow. And it's fairly well known sort of Keynes-based analysis that public investment tends to crowd in private investment. However, it will take some time before that happens. But to your larger question, is the media, pink media in particular, but also electronic media, isn't it too focused on FDI? Well, you know, we do need reforms in FDI policy, but you know, FDI in a large country like ours cannot play a very big role. Even at the peak of foreign direct investment in the year 2007-8, the last year before the economic crisis, FDI was only about 3% of GDP. So the remaining investment was of the which is of the order of 35-36% of GDP additional, was all private domestic.
Right.
So clearly what must happen is that public and private investment must revive, and perhaps FDI might begin to sort of pick up pace after that in a real sense.
All right, Gopal Krishna Agarwal, putting that question to you about the fact that, as Professor Mehrotra was just pointing out, that public investment and also domestic private investment, they have really been the major contributors towards growth in India. So why is the government only talking about FDI, or do you say that the government is not just only talking about FDI?
No, we are not only talking of FDI. What we are looking at is there are two things for the economic development. One thing is the capital that we require, and another is the labor. We have abundant labor, but we are short of capital.
Right.
And for the fulfillment of this, there is an echo on my sound.
Okay, we'll try to reduce that. Mr. Director, if you could.
Yes. So what I want to tell you is that we need lot of investment for the catalyzing our economic growth. We are looking for the domestic investment, but domestic investment will not come till the demand grows up, and demand can grow from the public investment, PSU investment or government spending. The government is short of resources, as we had lot of deficit in the current account and the fiscal account deficit, and the economy was under the inflation. Therefore, the government, there was to be reduced liquidity in the system. Therefore, we went for the FDI. We have to look for all the three investment criteria which will create demand and pull the catalyze the economic development and manufacturing sector or infrastructure development. All these issues can take place when there is investment from foreign countries, investment grows from the domestic industries, simultaneously government does its investment in the infrastructure.
Right.
So all the threes will together create the economic environment, and economic growth can take
that's
place.
the government argument.
Create employment, create jobs, create infrastructure.
All right, so we've established the basic arguments about what kind of FDI inflows have been coming in, what's on the government's mind, but the left has been constantly opposing FDI, not in the sense of truly FDI, but there are quite a few things that the left, Mr. Sen, has been opposed to as far as foreign direct investment is concerned.
The premise on which left is criticizing this line is that the whole understanding about the growth is fallacious. The manner, the picture is sought to be created, that once Prime Minister goes out, go and come back from 10 nations, so much FDI is coming, as if he is catching the FDI and bringing to country, and try to create an atmosphere which make people forget the logic.
Okay.
It is an established fact. I think all economists of all school will accept that a country like India cannot grow only by FDI, unless domestic investment grows, and the ground is created for the domestic investment. That means the people's purchasing power must expand.
Okay.
And on that, a focused initiative by the government is required, so that maintains, the demand generation maintains. This government earlier placed one budget. The focus of that budget is to squeeze the market, get the people's purchasing power dormant. And investment, any investment, is a function of the return on the investment prospect of that. Now, as on date, during last 1.5 years, every indicator shows that it is a discouraging feature, every economic indicator. Even from September to October, your manufacturing growth has plummeted like anything. The index of overall industrial production has plummeted. Unemployment is expanding.
Right.
So, and we are cutting down drastically the allocation because of our anxiety over containing fiscal deficit.
Right.
But in taken together, there is that the investment is getting discouraged, the investors. Whatever concession you may give, however increase the cap, this is not going to come unless this situation is improved.
Okay.
And for that, what is required to be prioritized instead of making announcement even without a cabinet meeting? What is required to be done is to focus on creating domestic capacity, ensuring capacity utilization of the domestic industry is number one.
Right.
And number two, creating domestic demand, domestic purchasing power, and focus on people so that they can be they can generate effective demand in the market.
All right.
I think that is the basic functioning which is been constantly being not only neglected, but every action of the government is leading to its erosion day by day.
Okay.
So even if you give open door and full door, why 49? Make it 100%,
Yeah.
even there will be a limit to coming.
All right,
And another point, let me clear. You must have your priority. I don't understand why in the media, news channel, radio, FDI should come.
Okay, fair enough.
Is that,
You're saying it's more attempt to manage headlines, if I would use Mr. Arun Shoury's words in that. But Mr. Himangshu, what's the fact is that it's also investment is very sentiment driven. The fact that India is doing well, if that is not, if money inflows are coming in, that would spur domestic investment as well, won't it, from the private sector?
Yeah, it makes a difference. See, in terms of investment, there are two different parameters. One, the domestic investment. See, Indian corporates, many of them are in a very bad shape in terms of their balance sheets are concerned. Many of them had invested assuming double-digit economic growth for many years, and actually the opposite had happened. Okay, so this is, it's a part of business risk you take, and you are left with huge debt. There's enormous stress on the banking system. And I think what the RBI governor and the government is trying to do is to de-stress these aspects. Right. You cannot be taking off on a rapid economic growth if your banks are not in order, many sectors are in problem. They are being sorted out slowly, like Discom reforms package. Yes, it's still work in progress. We have to see how it unfolds, but it is being done. The airlines have started to do better. So I think lots of little dots are coming together for a bigger picture. The other thing you need to consider is the global economy. Indian economy today is much more globalized than it was earlier. The international economic picture is not rosy at all. China is not doing well. Europe is not doing well. US sometimes does well, sometimes not as good as people expect. In this kind of a global environment, you look at many emerging countries, their currencies have been falling sharply against the dollar. In a relative sense, rupee has actually appreciated a lot, which then puts pressure on exports. And then comes the debate, if you want to counter that, should you do it by becoming more competitive with better infrastructure and various things, or should you do it by depreciating your currency, which will lead to inflation, and again you lose that advantage. So it's a very mixed, very complicated kind of a picture.
Right.
Domestic investment, I will repeat, is of paramount importance. Even if you recall industrial revolution and all, one of the reasons England did it so well was it had a huge domestic market and a lot of domestic investment. So all that is there. But right now, when you're not getting domestic investment because of the corporate balance sheet reasons, bank stress reasons, whoever is investing, Indian, foreign, welcome it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Agarwal, you wanted to come in. I'll quickly let you make that point before I go ahead with my next question.
And I agree with the speaker just now, because actually we are not saying that domestic investment is counterproductive. We are for domestic investment, but we have to look after FDI also. And the banking sector is the weakest link in our investment criteria. At present, our banking sector is completely stressed. There we have a lot of NPA. Unless that recovery takes place in the banking sector, and that will come through unlocking of many of the projects which were held up because of whether in the road sector or in the power. So I think the economy, we should see the economy in the larger picture, where domestic investment has a role. It is important. Government spending is important. FDI is important. Creating ease of doing business environment and creating an international perception about business-friendly country governance. So this all will attract and increase the economic cycle of the country.
Okay.
We should also see that our FDI has increased over 40%, where the global economy has seen recession. That is also important, that the perception about India is changing.
All right, you're saying the perception about India is changing, and Prime Minister Modi certainly is selling that perception, hard selling that perception. But Professor Mehrotra, as far as Prime Minister Modi's pet project Make in India goes, of making India a global manufacturing hub is concerned, now, in terms of FDI, it's just money coming in as far as technology transfer, as far as other things are concerned, because in my reading, what I learned was the fact that many a times money comes in and a technology or the company that's investing is in India is taking back that money, saying that that was for royalty use of that particular technology. So in that sense, do we have enough caps and caveats in our liberalization of these sectors?
Ishan, I think you're jumping the gun a little bit. If you don't mind, I'll come to that in a minute. You know, there are demand has been raised by two speakers, and I just want to sort of clarify some issues here. You know, how is the investment cycle going to revive, whether it is domestic or foreign investment? For that, two speakers have mentioned demand. There are two sources of demand. One is domestic demand, the other is foreign demand. Now, let me say a few words about domestic demand. One of the most important sources of domestic demand is the rural economy. Half of our workforce is in agriculture, but agriculture has been growing at 0.2% per annum in the last couple of years. You know, one of the very important reasons why the economy grew rapidly from 2004-05 onwards till about 2012 was because the rate of agricultural growth picked up. And one of the important reasons why the rate of agricultural growth picked up was because public investment in agriculture rose, private investment in agriculture rose, output and incomes rose, real wages rose. Right. Hence, domestic demand really significantly rose. That's what led to manufacturing growth being sustained for a significant period of time. That's how we had that dream run in terms of growth in the economy between 2003-04 and 11-12. So it's critical that public investment into agriculture must improve. If agricultural growth and incomes don't improve, domestic demand is not going to pick up, at least on a broad-based manner. And that's critical. You know, the middle class provides a limited share of the total domestic demand. Let me turn to the external market. Yes, the international economy is relatively in the doldrums, but the fact remains that we have done precious little, in fact, in a comprehensive manner to increase exports. If we had an industrial policy or we were implementing the national manufacturing policy of 2011, it would actually, and we focused our efforts, government efforts in particular, in sectors which are labor intensive, it will generate domestic demand, it will generate domestic jobs, but even more importantly, the labor-intensive sector will be able to export more, whether it is leather or textiles or garments and so on. So, you know, when the international economy is in relative doldrums, exports are not growing. It's critical that the government focuses its attention on those labor-intensive export sectors, which can, in a couple of years' time, begin to give us rapid export growth. So that should be the strategy, manufacturing policy and industrial policy, which we haven't had for 25 years since independence. So while, you know, ease of doing business is good, it's important, but it's not enough. We need to have the kind of industrial policy that East Asian economies had, that China had, which enabled them to generate manufactured exports, labor-intensive exports, which reduced poverty because it generated jobs. It generated jobs and it raised wages. That's the strategy.
Okay, Mr. Sen, the interesting point over there about rural wage growth and the fact that that is the real cause for worry. Now, with the government saying that trying to make India manufacturing hub with Make in India, there is an effort to absorb a lot of disguised unemployment that exists in the agricultural sector, perhaps. And in that sense, FDI would be perhaps one of the best routes to get in the best technology to get India moving faster in terms of the manufacturing. Won't you agree?
The thing is that technology transfer is not automatic with FDI. And the character of FDI flow during last 10 years, if anybody scrutinizes, very little technology has come.
Yeah.
Very little technology has come. Whatever new technology was generated, either we have developed by Indian researchers, or we have to straightaway purchase technology with a heavy cost. If you go for the electrical equipment sector, we purchase technology, and a part we ourselves developed. That is the history of the technology development issue, if you really. So it is not automatic that FDI will bring in this 21st century. Yes, in the earlier 60s, FDI brought technology,
Right.
our initial phase of industrialization. So that is not an automatic thing. This is number one. Number two, I fully agree with the formulation made by Mr. Malhotra. Number one, how do you expand your demand? By leaving away 65% of your population who are depending on agriculture. You agree or don't agree, that is the burden on us.
Right.
And they are now migrating because agriculture is not remunerative. The price, procurement price even does not match the cost of production. So they are migrating not to be absorbed in the urban economy and join the vast army of unemployed. And this vast army of unemployed is being utilized by the industrialized to bargain with the existing worker to keep their wage level down. And in fact, if you go through, again you scrutinize the growth of wages during last 10, 12 years, actually there was a fall in real terms.
Right.
Maybe in money terms it has increased, but in real terms there is a fall. So all these factors need to be addressed with priority.
Okay.
If any investment optimism is to be translated into reality, these are the issues. And here you are doing just opposite. If you see in the last budget, your ICDS, these are the major point of your this health in the midday meal. You are drastically curtailed the
Okay, so you're saying
allocation.
social sector spending is...
Then your health sector, you have drastically cut the spending with an assumption that private sector will be taking over, but that is not reality.
Okay.
That has not happened at all.
And that, Himanshu Vats, also leads to a question, as Mr. Sen was also pointing out, about the nature of the money that is coming into India, about the FDI. For example, in the construction sector, that has been recently liberalized further. In that, many say that it's just Indian black money coming back and being invested over here. So is that, in terms then, the best policy to have as far as making that sector, which is critical for economic growth?
You see, I can't comment on many people saying that this is actually black money coming back.
Yeah.
You know, there has to be some basis of that.
Okay.
I'm not saying this is necessarily white money or black money. So I'm really not in a position to...
As long as there's money coming into the country.
But I wanted to make a different point,
Okay.
apart from your question, about the agriculture. You know, agriculture in terms of GDP is not too big. I think it's in the teens, 15, 16, 17, somewhere there. But it is certainly very important. I think 2/3 of the population depends on it. And, you know, for the first time in many, many years, and maybe only a couple of times in a century, you've had 2 successive bad monsoons. Not only that, between the 2 monsoons, you know, when you had the winter crop, that was destroyed, damaged heavily by hailstorms and all kinds of weather. So there is acute rural distress just now, and that is reflecting in economic sentiment, whether people like it or not. You know, I don't think the Indian agricultural sector has seen this successive crop failure. One Kharif, then Rabi, and then Kharif again. It's not complete crop failure, but there is distress. You know, if a farmer has planted, it doesn't rain, and he has to replant, he has lost money. So once he replants, it will be a less remunerative crop or something else, which will add up in terms of million tons. But farmer does not get that price. You know, if instead of rice he has to plant dal, then you know things are different. So this is a sad state of affairs, but this is also, you know, sets you for a very good takeoff the moment you get 2 good seasons again.
Right.
So I have optimism there
Okay.
for the future.
Okay, optimistic about the future. I just have time for final comments. Professor Mehrotra, coming to you first. Yeah, Gopal, you wanted to come in? I'll give the final word to Professor Mehrotra. Yeah, go ahead.
What I want to tell you that I agree that agriculture sector is very important, and our 65% of population is dependent, contributing to only 15-20% of the GDP. Unless that improves, our economy may not go very fast. But how do you improve agriculture sector? You need to build infrastructure in the rural areas and create employment, alternative employment to the agriculture sector where there is disguised employment and underemployment. So I think we need to create infrastructure in the rural areas. Only 16% of our land area is irrigated. We need to create irrigated areas, and all this will require investment from the government side also and from the private and other sectors. So I think agriculture sector improvement can only take place when we create infrastructure in the rural areas and create alternative employment, bring less number of people dependent on alone agriculture sector, then only their conditions will improve.
All right, you made a point about increasing public investment and both private sector investment. Now, how that is going to happen is a question mark. And Professor Mehrotra, I'll give you the final word, because FDI, the way forward from here, is what we are calling our discussion today. And it seems that the government certainly is in a mood to open up a lot more sectors, try to get in a lot of foreign capital flows. But is that necessarily moving in the right direction? Where do you see this headed? If I could ask you to gaze into your economics crystal ball.
Well, there's no question that we need more foreign direct investment, but we should have it on our terms. That's the way forward. But I want to correct some factual errors that were made in the previous discussion. You know, it's not that 16% of our agriculture is irrigated. Some 40% of our agriculture is irrigated. And it should be much more, so more public investment should go into agriculture, and that I had emphasized earlier if demand is to be increased. And 65% of our workforce is not in agriculture. Only 49% of our workforce is in agriculture, but that's still half of the workforce. So it's absolutely critical that, you know, in the current phase of development, the focus should be on generating domestic demand. And of course, we should continue to improve our ease of doing business. Of course, we need to reform the sectors which might bring in foreign direct investment. But let us not be too optimistic about FDI flowing in an absence of domestic public and domestic private investment cycle picking up again.
All right, we'll have to leave it over there. And I think that basically sums it up, what Professor Mehrotra said, that it's a mix of FDI, domestic investment, domestic private sector investment, as well as public investment. And we'll have to leave it over there. Mr. Himanshu Vats, Mrs. Tapan Kumar Sen, Gopal Krishna Agarwal, and Professor Mehrotra, thank you, all of you, for coming in today and helping us understand, as far as FDI is concerned. We're talking a lot about it, especially across pink papers and the electronic media. But what it means in the real term, there is agricultural distress, of course, in the country. Rural wage growth is a big cause for concern. So is the banking sector, and a lot more to fix with the economy that not just only FDI can fix. And we'll have to wait and watch as to how this further develops as far as more investments into India. But both the private sector, the government, as well as FDI certainly are necessary. On that note, we'll wrap it up. Thanks so much for watching.